You may remember a while back we were working on a wooden-cased Decca 78 RPM record player from the early 40s, and we've already made a couple of videos of that player, restoring the amplifier and such. Well, now we're going to get the mechanical end of it working, and hopefully we will be playing a record before the end of this video. I've already have everything taken apart. In fact, I've already replaced the 3 rubber motor mounts. We need to clean all this up, make sure everything's moving freely. We need to take this motor apart, clean it, and re-lubricate it. And the whole hold-up was we had to have this idler wheel rebuilt, and I used Ed Crockett of Vintage Electronics in Hattiesburg, Mississippi for the rebuild. I've also used the www.thevoiceofmusic.com website, Gary Stork. I'd highly recommend both of those vendors for idler wheel rebuilding and needles and cartridges. It cost $32 to have this wheel rebuilt, and according to Mr. Crockett, this was a special wheel, so it took about 30 days for the turnaround on it. And we have our service shop approved lubricants here, zoom spout for the motor, and this white lithium grease, or anything else that slides. First, let's clean and lubricate the motor, and in order to do that we have to take it apart, and that's accomplished by removing these 2 bolts on the housing here. This motor still turns fairly freely, but something that's 70 years old, you know it needs to be cleaned and lubricated. Okay, I've now cleaned the bearings and the shaft with the contact cleaner and the alcohol. And as you can see, these oil wicks are bone dry, so I'm just going to soak these in zoom spout oil, let them soak for a few hours, and then they should be good to go. And these wicks are soaking the oil up as fast as I apply it. And I'll also apply some oil directly to the bearing itself. And here we are, reassembled, clean, lubricated, and running like a top. Of course, it'd be quieter if it wasn't resting on my workbench. Yeah, that's much quieter. So we'll let this run a little while and let the oil distribute itself within the bearings, and then the motor should be good to go. Now that we have the motor taken care of, we'll clean this piece up and lubricate it as necessary. Okay, we have everything reinstalled except the idler wheel. I'm now cleaning the motor capstan. The way I'm doing that is obviously I have the motor powered up, and I'm using a paper towel dipped in alcohol, and you can see the junk that's coming off the motor shaft. And on the idler wheel shaft, I like to use a mixture of white lithium grease as well as a drop of zoom spout oil, and I use the same mixture for the spindle here, which is held in place by a clip under here. Now, the original C-clip decided to fly across the room on me. Those things can be a pain to get off. So, you know, we keep all these junk parts for a reason, so I found a much easier to deal with E-clip and snap that on there, and that works just as well, probably better. And here we are, all put back together and running about as quiet as you'd expect for a 70-year-old drive mechanism. It's amazing what a little lubrication and a fresh idler wheel can do to quieten one down. Now we'll install everything back in the cabinet, and everything should be good to go. We can only hope. Okay, we're all back in the cabinet, almost ready to put the platter back on, but before we do that, we need to clean the inner rim of the platter with rubbing alcohol. The purpose for that is to remove any oil deposits or dirt or old rubber remains of the old idler wheel, anything that could interfere with smooth platter rotation. And you can see we dipped our paper towel in rubbing alcohol, and you can see the junk that came off of the inner rim of the turntable. Now that that's done, we'll just place this back down over the spindle, making sure the idler wheel is in the correct position, and then it should be good to go. Okay, we're back together and working pretty good. Booming volume, but it has enough volume to get the job done. Now, just to recap what was done, we overhauled the amplifier to include new capacitors and any resistors that were out of tolerance. We had the idler wheel rebuilt. We replaced the rubber motor mounting grommets. We cleaned the drive mechanism. And I'll admit, I made a little boo-boo when I put it back together. I had the idler tension spring in the wrong spot, and it didn't work. So that was my duh moment for today. And originally, this had a tone arm that tracked at about 90 grams. That's right, 90 grams. You didn't misunderstand me. With no provision to add a tracking adjustment spring or a counterbalance spring. Well, the owner of this phonograph didn't like that idea, so I had a tone arm off of an early 50s Webcore Kitty player that was beat to heck, and this one has a counterbalance spring under it, and I installed one of the modern green astatic or fan steel 911-S3, which is the equivalent to the old static 89T. This is a 78 RPM cartridge. The only drawback is the original cartridge puts out about 3 volts. And since this is a 1-tube amplifier, this 1-volt cartridge doesn't quite drive it to the volume level that the original cartridge did, but it does an okay job, and it tracks at around 8 grams, so that's much kinder to the 78s than what the original 90-gram cartridge was. And all of your love is there to take. Yes, hearts of stone will cause you pain. Although you love them. All my baby wants to do is the mambo. All my baby wants to do is the mambo. Morning, noon, and nighttime too, it's the mambo. Oh yes, and I also replaced the speaker in this unit. The original one, the cone was damaged, and we could have had it reconed, but that would have been rather costly, so the owner was okay with using a modern speaker in here, so that's what we did. Okay, there you go, the repair of the 1940 Decca 78 RPM record player. Ready to go back home and hopefully be good to go for many more decades. You had to turn that down. We don't want the copyright police jumping in on top of us. And one thing to note on these old players is they have no mechanism to move the idler wheel away from the motor when the player is turned off. So therefore, if you don't operate the player very often, the idler wheel will develop a flat spot. That's the reason 99% of these things, when you find them, the idler wheel has a notch in them that causes that bump, 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 bump sound as it turns. So, you know, the best thing to do, even if you don't use it, is let it run for, say, a half an hour or so a week, and that should keep your idler wheel in good shape. Okay, there you go. Thanks for watching, and more to come later.